Welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Impact of AI and Big Data. I'm your host, Melissa Drew. This week's episode is sponsored by WILDA, Women Leaders in Data and Artificial Intelligence. Today we have Laura Ellis. She is VP of Data Engineering and Platform Analytics with a network and cybersecurity company. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Melissa.
So some of the things that I've learned about you recently that I'd love to chat about is that you have a long-term blog, and I'd like to know what long-term means, but a long-term blog called Little Miss Data, which I love that thing. And also just within it's going on 3 years now, you run an annual event that happens once a year, and it's called Data Mishaps. I'd love to know a little bit more about that.
Awesome. Yes. So my blog, and honestly, now that you said that, what does long-term mean? I'm like, I don't remember how many years it's been. It's been at least
long-term.
It's somewhere between 5 and 10, probably closer to 5 is when I've had my blog, and I don't remember when it started. But yeah, I just sort of live out loud about all things data, what's going on, kind of things I think are cool, interesting, or challenging and hard, and maybe we should chat about them. And that's been a really good way to get to know people in the data space. So that's Little Miss Data. And then Data Mishaps Night is a very fun event that my great friend Caitlin Huden and I started 3 years ago. And it's just a place, like a safe space for people to share their data mistakes that they made. And then we can learn from each other, we can empathize. And it also just is intended to normalize that we make mistakes, which is, I feel like in any single project that you would take, you'll make at least one. So why are we just only talking about our successes? Let's talk about our failures too.
Right. I've been in data since 1995, so I have a lot more than just one mistake.
Right. Exactly.
Now, is that meant, you said annually, is that virtually, in person, both?
It is just virtual, and it's just virtual. It's not recorded because we do want people to be able to share, right? It's annually because it takes a lot of work to run an event, as people who might be listening who run events know. And, we just want to keep it fun. We don't want to turn it into a big chore.
And I believe you mentioned this past event was one of your largest?
It was. We started out, we're lucky to get great traction each year. I think the first year we had about 200 people attending, and then last year somewhere between 3 and 4, and then the year before that, and then last year we were bumping up on 400 that actually came. So it was really cool.
Well, it's interesting that we talk about this because I did see this on LinkedIn floating around, and I thought, oh, what a great thing, but I didn't join because I didn't have a mistake at the moment to talk about. But now, recognizing that you're the person behind the scenes, this isn't just me having a mistake that I want to talk about right now, but it's also joining and listening to others and learning from them. So next time I will definitely join.
Awesome. Well, we would love to have you, and you can come and share your mistake as well. We have about 12-ish speakers every time, so that could be you, Melissa.
Okay, perfect. So Laura, everyone knows at this point that I don't quite stalk you on LinkedIn, but I do look you up on LinkedIn as preparation for this. And you were one of the few people that I've spoken to that started your professional and educational career in technology. You started in software engineering. You then went back, probably, gosh, you went back and got a secondary education in predictive analytics, which I did not know that there was a degree related to that topic. And then what's most interesting is just recently, as of April of 2022, you received your Chief Data Officer Executive Certificate. I'm really interested in understanding what attracted you to technology, because you started right away in that field.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I don't know I wish I had an amazing story, honestly, of what attracted me to technology. But really, if you think about when you join university or college, depending where you're living, like, I was just a kid. And so I liked science and math. And I happened to be super fortunate to win just some grade level computer science award. And I was, that happened. It wasn't a big deal. I'm not trying to make it a big deal. But to me, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to have to major in something. I'll probably be a teacher like my parents are. So why don't I just pick computer science? Because apparently that's going well for me. And that's how I got into doing software engineering. And then when I graduated, I happened to be able to land a job. And I thought, okay, I'll just do this job for a bit and then I'll go back to teaching. And that was kind of where the whole thing started. Because, once you leave school and then you start making corporate money, it's a little bit harder to go back unless there's a compelling reason.
True.
Right.
That's a very true statement. Yes. I do want to just highlight because folks are going to come and look at you on LinkedIn. Hopefully, they'll connect with you, maybe subscribe to your blog. But one comment that came back to me on LinkedIn was, why is it that a lot of the women that you speak to are from IBM? And someone will notice on your LinkedIn page that you have a little over 15 years with IBM before moving out into your current role. And I just want to address that for everyone listening. I don't do this on purpose, I promise. In fact, when I connected with Laura, I didn't even know that she was with IBM until we spent more time talking. I looked more at her LinkedIn page and then I saw it. It just so happens to be that way. The more I started to pay attention to this, the more I realized that pretty much everybody I bumped into has either worked for IBM, has a father or brother or sister who is working for IBM right now, or recently worked from IBM or currently working for IBM. So I think it's just one of those things where, everybody's got a laptop at some point, everybody's worked with IBM.
Oh yeah, I mean, IBM has what, 300,000 employees now, kind of ebbs and flows. It's like a small nation, right? So it's like not surprising that I worked in the past, you work there now, there might be other people, it's not surprising that there would be such a big network.
Yeah. So let's focus on where you are today. The company you're with is network security and cybersecurity. I don't have a lot of expertise in cybersecurity. I understand the background of it, the programming piece of it, but I find the topic really, really interesting. This is where I'd like to pivot right now is, what are you doing? What do you do? Because you're VP of data engineering and platform analytics for a company that really supports highlighting network vulnerabilities, focused on cybersecurity, which I think we might want to start with. What's the definition of cybersecurity?
Oh my gosh.
Really simple. Just a really
yeah.
simple one.
Right. I think it's just to protect our assets, right? So to proactively protect them through vulnerability management in our case, and to reactively protect them through detection and response. And honestly, there are all flavors of it from beyond that, right? So there are so many ways that you can monitor, identify, and then react to threats of any kind. And it seems like the more that we make progress in this area, the more that hackers find new ways, and it's just a growing space. And so I'm just really excited. I've only been in the cybersecurity industry for a year now, right? And I'm excited to just be here and learning.
Give us an example of something not client specific, but maybe a type of project or something that you're currently involved in.
Yeah. So, it's funny. When you ask somebody about any domain that they're working on, there are, of course, domain specific use cases, right? Like if I was in the retail industry or the food industry, but there's also just like, it's a business like any other. And you're doing also business analytics around, clients buying your product, adopting, actually having productive usage. And so a lot of my work, I mean, we have a ton of data scientists that actually work on the products themselves. detecting threats and vulnerabilities and using data science to better detect those or detect them faster. But my job is primarily focused on the business and driving the business forward. And probably one of my biggest overlap areas is around product usage. So when a client actually purchases our product, we are trying to make sure that they're actually able to productively use our product and be successful in their goals. And so that would be sort of my cybersecurity lens on the type of projects we take on. But that said, there's still just a lot of, hey, we're a business and we need to be healthy projects.
I noticed that your role is data engineering, emphasis on the word engineering. You mentioned that there are data scientists that work from you. I'm seeing more titles with the word engineering. Is there a specific difference, or have you understood why the word engineering versus another word?
Melissa, I will not die on any hill over title. Like, period. I'm just going to tell you that because there's so many. And now there's analytics engineering, and now there's, there's data analyst versus data scientist, and there's ML engineer, and there's AI ops, and it's like, if you are in a field and you feel like you've got a title that reflects your work, I am so very happy for you. And I feel like data engineering and platform analytics reflects my team's title, but it doesn't mean it reflects their work, but it doesn't mean that like 10 other titles wouldn't, or that other people don't deserve that title too. So I just, I'm happy to chat about it, but it's not the hill I'm dying on.
Oh yeah, I think more along the lines of what does a data engineer do compared to data management or some of the other, roles that you just listed?
Yeah. So my data engineering team, and I also think data engineers can take all flavors as well, right? But my team of wonderful, amazing data engineers who I love focus on going out and getting all the data from the organization that we need to use to analyze and drive our business forward. And so that takes all forms, right? Because data is available in all forms. So it could be setting up replicas of other databases. It could be going out and calling APIs. It could be setting up integrations with other tools directly. It could be listening to Kafka feeds or setting up Kafka topics. But basically, step one, get all the data in. Step two, we don't stop there. We have to make it usable and accessible. And so, there's a lot of data transformation that happens there. And then we actually do also a lot of enablement as well, because our team, I think like a lot of teams aspire to be, but our team is really like in their hearts very focused on getting people appropriate access to the data that they need to do their jobs. And then there's security and governance and all that mixed in.
If I focus on the data part of it, not the analytics part of it, what are some of the things that you've seen, not here, but throughout your career, in how the interpretation of data has changed? And let me give you a better clarification. I drink coffee. Starbucks. Sorry, I couldn't think of Starbucks. I drink them every day almost. Starbucks. So I have always been a part of the Starbucks app, that gives me the rewards. And over time, the definition of what a consumer wants and the changes of how they use data to match that has evolved. And now, last year, they were focused on over 400,000 different variables to accommodate the uniqueness of our hyper-personalization. And just within a recent article, I read that now they're going to add weather on top of that to even further drive hyper-personalization, so that as I'm driving near a Starbucks and it sees my app, it'll recognize the weather and be able to differentiate between that ice drink I want versus that hot drink that I typically drink. So when we look at that type of over time, how personalization with data and how the nuances and definition of what data means to me, I'm curious because like I said, you've been in this for over, if I counted up right, almost 18 years focused in that data area. I'm curious what you've seen in the
Okay.
evolution of that change.
Yeah, and of course it's my biased view of my journey, right?
That's
So
quite all right.
yeah, right. So when I started, I was in databases
Mhm.
and it was all about store data, serve it up to the app, right? You are here. Of course, there were teams and statisticians have been doing analysis this whole time, right? But a lot of the focus around data and data storage and serving of data was around supporting applications, right? And so it's a smaller, typically it tends to be like a smaller set of data and a more specific use case every single time.
Mhm.
Um, Over time, we've had access to more data. We've had not only access to more data, just meaning like we can get at it, right? And people are storing data more and more. You know, anything you do, you should be collecting data on it now. But additionally, we can physically access more data in one go than we could. So we can use data more effectively. And I know that sounds very abstract, but really it's like before you were limited by database capacity, like on one single server.
Mhm.
Now we've got all these, you know, we've got all sorts of distributed technology where you can essentially, if you're ready to pay for compute, like have at it, whatever data you want to use. So we can get it, we can use it, and our techniques to use it are even, you know, they're exploding too, right? And so I guess the theme I'm seeing, and I'm sure Melissa, you're seeing the exact same theme, is just like every time it's like feels like we keep making steps forward and then we get more expectations, right?
Mhm.
And then you have to make more steps forward and then you get more expectations. The playing field is constantly changing at a rapid pace here. So every time you think maybe, okay, now I've got enough data, or now I've got my compute problem figured out, I can access all the data, or I know what I'm supposed to do statistically here, or everybody has access to the data, like people can use it, the playing field changes and the bar is moved.
Mm.
And so, but that's what keeps it exciting.
I think you articulated that much better than I could have. I really like that, and that actually is a very true observation. I just don't think I've worded it or heard it worded in such a way, but I much like the way you just explained
Aw,
that.
that's
That
so nice.
it's this, it's not just the, we expect more and more disruptions. It's also that every time we draw the line, the line in the sand that you've mentioned, and we think we've got it goes back to that Starbucks example. Well, yeah, you got it. 400,000 variables is quite a bit, but wait, let's add weather in there. Let's just, again, you're moving the bar. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about dark data? So I've become a little bit more exploring into this concept. So dark data, the way it was explained to me is a lot of companies throughout the throughout the evolution of collecting data collect a lot of data. Their arms are so wide open that they're collecting a fishnet of data, and then they only use a portion of that.
Right.
And the feedback that I've gotten from some is that dark data is all that other data that you've collected, but you didn't know what to do with it, or you didn't know you had it because you were trying to pick and choose the data that you really needed. Do you find that you have those kinds of you've bumped into some of those examples?
Yeah, I think every company, right? I think this is common
Mhm.
to want to collect data in case you might need it. I think there is absolutely a case for dark data, especially and not specifically for people in the cybersecurity industry, but anybody. That data can be very beneficial if you're trying to piece together a what happened scenario, whether it is sort of an attacker situation or something went down. That type of like telemetry data.
Mhm.
I feel like telemetry data is often very dark data and it's not useful until it is, until you need it. And then you're
Okay.
super happy to have it. Um, but then there is a lot of other data that's just collected and maybe not used. And of course I've encountered those. I think most people have, but what I really do try to do is with my teams is if we're going to collect data, we're going to use it, because every single data that you collect has a cost. Even if you're not using compute against it, you are storing it, even if it is with very minimal money on S3, but you are paying some money. It has a risk because it's just sitting there dormant. And if you're not loving it, it's probably more prone to attacks than everything else. And then it has a value, right? And so I think every time you onboard data or you take data, you have to always weigh out the cost, risk, and value of it and say, like, does this make sense for me?
Thank you for elaborating that a little bit further, because I was going to follow up with what is the balance between, should we be collecting just a net of data versus when we do, should we be collecting a net's worth of data, recognizing that we're not using it all and we're just setting it aside? And what I heard from you a moment ago is there's this really fine balance between, you mentioned telemetry data, that it's great that it's not there, but when you need it, you want it there. And then the other side of the balance is, but there's also a cost and a risk. And maybe we should think a little bit more about, yay, that's great that you have dark data, but maybe you should step back and wonder why you have so much dark data. So I think that's a really good question that we pose for our audience is, when your company comes up to you and says, let's go look at our dark data, great, but maybe step back and ask, why do we have so much dark data and what's the risk associated with that?
Yeah, and the telemetry data, I think if you're taking on a new use case, you have to always evaluate those three, right? Cost, risk, and value. And we can put just a big bucket around it and say, like, all telemetry data, we're willing to pay for that extra cost. We'll kind of put fences up around it for the risk, and the value is not always there, but it spikes when you need it.
Right.
But I'll say, Melissa, my alarm bells go off when people just say, like, we have a bunch of dark data. That is my worry, because when you have a bunch of dark data, that means you're not loving and caring for it, and that is risk.
I love that. You're not loving and caring for your data.
You have to. You have to love your little data babies.
That tells me you are so passionate about data. Just that one statement, and I know that at your heart, you are passionate about data.
I totally am. Yeah.
If we look to wrap up here, Laura, someone who is listening to this that has this passion of data that you've highlighted, what are some steps that they can start to get involved in? And I'm assuming that these are, people at the college level, maybe just exiting college, starting their first job. They haven't quite found the role that they're interested in, but they know that data is really where they want to be. How can they pivot their career?
I think if you are passionate about it, then just go. And I know that's kind of intangible, but just go and don't let anybody stop you. And the best way to start is to start. I know it sounds so silly, right? But if you really want to do it, don't let anything stop you. You're no different than anybody else who broke in, right? You can do it. Just begin. Start taking that course that looks cool. Start reading that book that looks interesting. Start getting your hands on and picking a project. So just go. And then the second half of that is connect with people along the way. Don't do it in a bubble and tell yourself, I will tell people I'm doing this once I'm perfect or awesome, because the bar is always moving and none of us ever feel like we've got it. I still do not have it. And just connect with people, because those are also your opportunities. And the more you're putting yourself out there that you want this, that you're doing these things, the more you'll be in the back of people's mind when opportunities come up.
I'm going to take that and circle back to the very beginning of this conversation when we mentioned that you went back to school recently to get a Chief Data Officer Executive Certificate. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So why? I mean, you've been out of college, for whatever, over 5 years. And a lot of people would say, that's it, great, I'm done. So what prompted you to want to go back and get specifically that area?
And like twice, why? Honestly, sometimes I'm going, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to yourself? But I went back, basically the highlight is I don't believe in doing school just to do school.
Okay.
I didn't do my master's after school because there wasn't anything I was passionate about yet to do it, to justify it. I eventually hit a limit with my data and software engineering skills where I realized I did not have the statistics to do data science. And that's when I went back the first time. Because tangibly, I did learn a ton about statistics, which can be hard to do if you don't, have something pushing you. And then I said to myself, never again. Truly, I was like, that's not happening. Apologize to my husband and my children. We're never doing that again. And then I don't know, X years later, maybe 6 years later or something, I saw the chief data officer certificate, and I was searching for something there too, is to just better understand. I'd kind of done all the different sort of data roles and then was in leadership, and I just wanted to know better about what other leaders were thinking and saying and about the full data landscape. And it was a very cool program. It wasn't easy. I thought I had expectations it would be easier than it was. It definitely was not easy. And it was kind of like a mini MBA. It was 6 months, and you had a group and you were constantly working on this ongoing business case, but learning things and injecting that. And I got very, very close with my team and my coach there, because they actually set you up with chief data officer coaches, which was really neat. And it was a really enriching experience. So why? Because I felt I had to, but I would never do it if I didn't feel that I just was so compelled, because you have to be in it because it's hard.
The passion to learn more, but specifically you found something that you wanted to learn about.
Yeah. Yes. There, much better put than me. Thank you, Melissa.
I think that is the perfect stopping point for today. This was wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. I know you carved some time out for today. Laura, anybody can reach out to you on your LinkedIn page?
LinkedIn, Twitter, littlemissdata.com. And sorry, littlemissdata.com is my website, or Twitter, littlemissdata, any of those things.
And then follow you so that if you're interested in that annual data mishaps event, it sounds like I found it. In fact, that's, I think, how I found you was I was following you and read the data mishaps, and that's how I found you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. It's super fun and just a really great community full of supportive people. So it's at night, and if you're the type of person that's going to attend a data event at night, then you're our type of person.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Laura.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, Melissa.